You hire these mugs, they missed, now you're through. If you ain't out of town by tomorrow morning, you won't never leave it except in a pine box.
Cinematic Fantastic.
Klaatu, Barada, Nikto.
I'll show you who I am and what I am.
Bitten by a werewolf and lives, becomes a werewolf himself.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to the Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Weatherford.
And your other host, William Weatherford.
Get ready for opinions, dad jokes,
and bad jokes
as we watch and review sci-fi and fantasy films from the classics of yesteryear to the new favorites of today.
If you wanted something to do in between seasons,
when you're missing us dearly and life feels uneven,
we'll stop on by and give you a lift. Brought you a present.
Brought you a gift.
This is a bonus episode, little bit different from the ones you know.
4 theme movies in a row. Welcome to the bonus. Thankful that you joined us. Now here's the bonus episode. Hello, welcome to Cinematic Fantastic. Hi everybody. Welcome to the only podcast that covers 1930s and 40s and some 50s in the future sci-fi and fantasy movies that are so old that they don't even have color. And they're really good.
We'll get some color. So we've had some color. We'll have some more color, I'm sure. But, you know,
but
it is
the only one. The only podcast
really
that has this content for you guys. The only one. No others.
I don't think that's
true.
At least
under 100 views.
I don't think that's true. I've seen a couple, but if it's if you want to live in that world where you're the only one, that's fine. Whatever.
Today we're covering our second gangster movie that we've got here, and it's Little Caesar, 1931. And
yes.
So funnily enough, I looked up the book. This is actually, it came from a book 2 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
They really got onto that. They were like, the book came out. Oh, we've got to post something about this because everyone's got a craze for gangsters. But I found this picture that says Little Caesar, but without the A. Mm-hmm. I guess due to space concerns. But I'm like, that's hilarious to me. Like Little Caesar.
Little Caesar. What if it was Little Caesar? What about Caesar?
Caesar. I think they'd have an A at the end.
Okay, yeah, or
toward the end.
I think it's an E at the end. Yeah.
Usually, when you think of Little Caesars, you think of the pizza brand. You don't think of the movie nowadays.
Yeah, if we said we were doing Little Caesar, you're like, well, I'm not really a big fan of that. I'm more of a Domino's guy myself. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a movie called Little Caesar. Okay. Who was in that? And then you start mentioning.
And the rough notes for this movie is, well, incredibly similar to the last movie we did.
A lot of these are strangely
The Public
enough.
Enemy, 1931.
Yeah.
We have a gangster who, in the news at a restaurant with spaghetti, he figures out, oh, this gangster business is where it's at. So he joins the mafia. Basically, it's their own sort of mafia. They don't do way too much. They stick up a place, but not really anything else we see in the movie. It's a lot more about the dynamic between this organization and their many competitors and leaders. And he, in particular, is very pushy, I guess, to get to the top. So somehow he starts pushing everyone else out of the business.
He is Rico Bandello.
He being Rico Bandello.
With the nickname of Little Caesar. If you want, he's played by a very famous actor.
Although apparently, in the book, his name was actually Cesare Bandello, which is funny.
Okay. So it wasn't Rico or whatever. So they just kind of put that in there.
And another thing about this movie is that the actor who plays Rico is Edward G. Robinson.
Yes.
Who, in fact, is actually the gangster voice. Every time you think of it, this is the man. And you
Yes.
wonder how it got this way. It's because of what Looney Tunes did, especially Bugs Bunny, the voice actor whoever did him. He made a lot of parodies of Edward G. Robinson, and that became the 1930s gangster stereotype. You know,
Yeah.
See?
I'm giving you 2 seconds to give me the dough, see?
Okay. Some guys just can't take it, see? Yeah.
That was from that. That was from Bugs Bunny, and Bugs Bunny got that from Edward G. Robinson. Especially in this movie, you can hear it toward the end.
Yes.
I was like, with the Public Enemy, the previous movie we did, like, I didn't hear any, like, gangstery stereotype in his voice. So I was like, I wonder where this actually, like, came from most strongly. And then that got answered by this movie.
I do think that James Cagney, some of the way he talked, I do think of that when I think of, like, kind of that gangster talk. Not necessarily, Edward G. Robinson, yes, I would agree. The other thing about it is, that I want to mention is about typecasting of these guys. Because I know that James Cagney felt like he got typecasted a little bit, about playing that thug kind of gangster character. But at least he had those other talents. I mean, I don't know if Edward G. Robinson may have a great singing voice, but I've never seen him sing in anything.
Especially when you have the gangster voice, it's sort of hard to be anything else. Like, take the third pillar of gangster voices, or mafia voices in this case, that you think of, would be Marlon Brando. He's like, I'm going to make an offer that you won't refuse. He's got that sort of voice.
He can make you an offer you can't refuse,
It's sort of like into his, like, throat or wherever on earth he's storing that. I haven't watched the movie, but I've seen, like, clips, where it's like, it's sort of like in his cheek area.
It is in his cheeks,
there. It's really weird.
Like he's got cotton in there. He plays a character, famous character, Vito Corleone, and he is the godfather of the Corleone crime family. So he is, yes, very famous. But, also there's other, Italian gangster stereotypes where it's just like, the Joe Pesci, talks like this. You saying I'm a clown? Are you saying I'm funny to you? Are you saying I'm a clown? That's a bad impression, but you get the idea. But the classic 1930s, you got James Cagney and you got Edward G. Robinson. They just put, the stamp on it. But I do think that James Cagney, he had singing and mainly dancing and other things that he could do. Edward G. Robinson really got typecasted, in that, and when he wasn't a gangster, he was a criminal of some sort.
The other guy who sort of feels a little bit gangstery to me for some of the trailers that I've been watching recently for many of these movies, Leonardo DiCaprio.
He
sort of looks like he would be a gangster. I mean, not to rag on him for not to say that
are you
he's
talking about the
immoral or anything, or like he's bad in any way. I don't even know the how.
Are you talking about The Departed? There was a movie about Irish gangsters called The Departed, and it was based off of a movie from China, a Hong Kong movie called Infernal Affairs, and it was remade as The Departed, and Scorsese directed that one. That has Jack Nicholson as a big bad Irish gangster, and Leonardo DiCaprio is a cop, but he's infiltrated into the gang, and he's pretending. So
it all blends together. It might have been so because that doesn't sound like a particularly notable title. The Departed, just okay, but.
It's a good movie.
Look sort of a bit like that.
Yeah,
level.
I don't know about DiCaprio.
I'm not saying that he's a bad person or that he did anything gangster in his life. I don't know. Just saying a lot of iconic people you think of sort of in these genres.
Well, he used to. Okay, I do know that Leonardo DiCaprio, when he was younger, he used to hang out with Tobey Maguire and guys like David Blaine, the magician, and they used to hang around and trying to pick up chicks all the time. So that is true. And I think Tobey Maguire and DiCaprio still hang out at basketball games and stuff like that. You see them around. So, hey, there you go. And DiCaprio almost played Spider-Man at one point, which is kind of funny. I think they also were trying to offer him the Riddler
I would think
at some
at the point
Yeah,
where
that didn't
he
work.
has like Titanic money, he has
He
really
was in
just
Django.
Titanic. That's the only thing I could think of that was like big.
Oh, that was huge.
Especially with the could James fit on the door thing.
Yeah. Well, he's later on. He did some movies with Tarantino. He worked with Scorsese a lot. I mean, most recently he was in Killers of the Flower Moon, and that was like 3-hour long movie. But
Tarantino and
won some
Scorsese have a
Oscars.
lot of those gangster movies under their belt.
Criminal, yeah, I'd say criminal stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, Gangster is sort of, cut to the 1960s and before era, and, the criminals, and the more general types would be beyond that.
Yeah, and you were correct in comparing this movie to The Public Enemy. We don't show Rico Bandello when he was a young man, though. We don't show him kind of coming up that early. We show him kind of where he's already he's already a gangster in a way, but he's starting out. He's like, his first thing that he says was, we got to do something more than just, shooting up
do you want to know something?
Gas stations. Yeah, go ahead.
When you think about it, Rico does not have quite strong of a character because he's just not that interesting. He doesn't have any nuance to him. We don't know that much about him, other than somehow he is gaining through the corporate world without, he in particular. It could be anybody raising through the world, but it was him in particular. But we don't quite get any founding for this.
Yeah.
In The Public Enemy, Tom Powers was actually relatively reclusive in rights because he was like, one of the only like the gangsters, because he was sort of on his own, sort of.
In a way, well, it was him and Matt Doyle, and you saw them both together a lot, and they worked for Patty Ryan, but you don't see like a gang, a good group in this movie. You're right, you do see like a group of people that they're working with. Where you have
less people, there's less power to spread.
Yeah.
Through potential people, I think, and when you think about it, this movie, it's like, okay, anyone really could have done that comparatively because there's a lot more members of this gangster group here. That it's like, why him? Why Rico?
Well, here's the thing.
What makes him special?
Well, here's the thing. He's violent. I think that when he wants something, he's going to take it. So there's similarities with Tom Powers, but I think that Tom Powers doesn't always jump to violence. He did jump to violence when it came to going after Matt Doyle's killers, but Rico, they keep talking about you're pretty good with a rod, aka a gun, and he's just
the only real thing
he's
he
really
did
trigger
was
happy.
He stuck out. He shot a very important pillar head in. I think it was even like the agency head. So that was the only like real notable thing that he did quite throughout, other than generic unnamed gang activities. Tom Powers, he was in a lot of, he was stealing furs. He was stealing alcohol. He was doing a lot more different things other than he did take revenge upon Putty Nose, who was the guy who ditched him. He ding-dong ditched him. Yeah. And that was the one thing where he was like, outright violence versus, that's pretty hard because actually they're fairly balanced when you think about it on the surface. What do you think?
Well, I think Rico did not want to be just an under guy. He didn't like it where, there was always somebody else calling the shots. He was like, oh, I got an idea for this job we got coming up. And they're like, Vittori, Sam Vittori guy that's over him, first off, he says, it's my gang, my plan. And he starts muscling and going, oh, okay. But it's really, you could tell where the guys are going. They're kind of going where we respect Rico more. He's tougher. He'll kill you. Rico will kill you. I think he keeps wanting to go up and up. He is. He keeps wanting to go up and up and up, though.
He does his job well.
Yeah, you notice that
does his job
he
well.
sees things like there's a part where he like looks at Arnie Lorch's ring, and he sees his tie brooch or tie pin, and it's like the camera is like pointing at him. So you're like, he's really focused on those things. He says like, I don't want a lot of the extra riches and stuff, or money's not super important. But wait a minute, it kind of is, because money buys power, or money is a way to show you're powerful. But he keeps going up and up and up. And it's just like the Public Enemy, you can't, with Tom Powers, he couldn't let it slide that somebody, was coming after him. He couldn't let go. If the horse killed his buddy Nails Nathan, he had to kill it. Okay. He had to kill a horse. So I think Rico is very similar to that, but they had different ambitions. Rico, like a Caesar, an emperor, he wants to be the most powerful. With Tom Powers, I don't think he wanted to be like the boss's boss's boss. But Rico wanted to keep going up and be, it's almost like he's like, I want what big boys got. But he gets a big head. He gets too high ambitions.
I agree. And I think that it was sort of that Tom Powers got roped into the gangster activities. It was sort of his personality that he couldn't get out of the gangster activities, especially when, they were bringing him a high state of life compared to the more successful brother he had, whom he thought that what he was doing, that side of work was not good. It was stupid. It was worthless. But what he was doing was not what Matt was doing, and
Mike.
Sorry, I get them confused. Last episode, you can tell.
Yeah, it's M names.
Very similar names.
But the other guy, you talked about getting out of the game a little bit, or trying to anyway. In this
how
movie,
do you, when you are that's the thing that you do? It's like, how do you get out?
There's a character in this movie. The character in this movie that's really trying. And that's Joe Massara, played by Douglas Fairbanks Jr.
The actual interesting character of this movie.
You think so? You think? Well, I mean, I think so.
Especially since he has, sort of realized that ultimately he can't continue with this for more reasons, especially how it would mess up any other chance or any other thing that he wanted to do in life. I mean, he wanted to do some DDR at the arcade with his girl, and
he wanted to dance in a club. I don't think that's quite the same thing as DDR, but
yeah, he was really into DDR. But
right,
having the gang around while doing DDR is not something that is particularly pleasant. You could clip that out of context if you want to.
For the older folks who don't know it as much, it's Dance Dance Revolution. But yeah, Joe Massara, he really dances almost like ballroom dancing. I didn't see him do any kind of, hoofing, like, like
he wasn't Fred Astaire.
No, you're right. He didn't tap dance. He wasn't doing a Gene Kelly or a Fred Astaire kind of thing going on.
It was sort of like the two sisters from White Christmas.
Yes.
How they weren't particularly showy, but everyone liked them. They were amiable. They were pretty enjoyable. You could see the bliss in his eyes.
But do you remember the scene in White Christmas that had one of the sisters, and she was doing a dance to a movie, to the song in the movie where Danny Kaye was in there singing about choreography. She did quite a bit of dancing in that, a lot more than, I don't know if Douglas Fairbanks Jr. is a real dancer. I do think he's agile like his father, probably less or so. By the way, quick note, in the last Golden Gangsters episodes, or the part 1 or part 2, can't remember which one it was, I said Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Zorro himself, wrong. Son of Zorro, because his father, Douglas Fairbanks Sr., was Zorro. He played Robin Hood in silent movies, and he played The Thief of
Baghdad.
Thief of Baghdad.
I honestly need to see the Douglas Fairbanks Sr. version of Zorro, because the only version I have seen was the 1950s Disney version, The Sign of Zorro.
100%.
I feel like, if anything, The Sign of Zorro is probably something you could easily get your kids into, especially since, well, that was the only Zorro that I could see, because, Disney Plus, just searching around, Sign of Zorro, I'm gonna watch that. Only Zorro thing on Disney Plus, because everything else is Warner Brothers and MGM.
Yeah, the other Zorros that came out later was The Mask of Zorro. I think that had Antonio Banderas and Anthony Hopkins. It was very good.
I don't think it lasted farther than the 70s. It might have gone into the 80s, but I would be surprised.
Those movies, those Antonio Banderas movies, came out in the 90s.
Wow.
So, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., I remember him from a movie called Sinbad the Sailor. And that actually movie did not do so well, but I remember it because I had it on video. I'd recorded it off the TV, and I remember that one. It was like he was looking for the treasure of Alexander the Great. But
I feel like, of all people to have a treasure, that would actually be fairly reasonable, because Alexander the Great, he was a conqueror,
yes,
and
Macedonian.
Of course he would collect stuff, but also, like, do you truly know anything about Alexander the Great, other than that he conquered, like, the entirety of Rome?
Yeah, he conquered the entirety of Rome, and some say all the way to India, and all the way up, even into parts of Europe. Got
like all the way into, like, not South Africa,
northern Africa,
Egypt?
like Morocco. Yeah, that's where you get Alexandria. But back to the main deal. His character is trying to get out of the game, but at the same time, he's got, I think he's kind of pressured from his girlfriend too, because she wants to get out of it. Plus, Rico is kind of giving him a little bit of guff for wanting to be a dancer. Did you notice that he calls him a sissy one time? And I'm like, oh, come on, man. It really does not endear you to Rico's character. It does not make you like him at all. The guy's got a dream. The best you could do is get behind his dream, because he encouraged you in your dream, Rico, and you can't encourage your buddy in his dream to be a dancer? I mean, come on.
Especially when he is paired up with his girlfriend, Olga Stasov, who, very, very Scandinavian name, as you can tell, who is played by Glenda Farrell. And Glenda Farrell, I've seen before in the Wax Museum.
No. Oh, who did she play?
She was the main reporter lady.
Oh, that's the lady that I thought was a Fay Ray, but wasn't.
Yes, and
she was good in that.
She was great in that.
Yeah.
And I feel like even while she is more subdued in role, definitely comparatively on one front, you can still feel that sense of agency from her character, because you see her realizing, oh, you're in a gang. What can we do about that? What can we do when Rico is coming to our door and he will have no mercy? And her just considering all of the risks, the riskiness of the situation. And she ultimately is like, well, there's no use running from this. We can't run from this.
And that she wants to call Inspector Flaherty, or Lieutenant Flaherty, whatever his name is. I don't know if he's a sergeant or something.
Yeah, ultimately that choice gets nullified sort of by the situation, how particularly it happens. But, of course, that's later in the movie.
But let's put it this way. As far as memorable characters in this, I do think Edward G. Robinson cemented himself, like cement shoes, that's bad, cemented himself in this role of, like, the gangster boss, the criminal boss. So much so that, it was easy to parody it on with Bugs Bunny. Anybody that was really, like, easy to do an accent or do an imitation of was just ripe for putting in Bugs Bunny, because you'd be like, I know who that is. He had that voice.
Yeah. Although it could get, a lot of those people are very, 60s and back, and then it's like sometimes there's parodies, and you're like, who on earth are they parodying? And then you realize it's someone who's, like, really, really old guy back in like eons ago, and you're like, really? We've got like some 70-year-olds on this on this 2000s movie making jokes from the 50s.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. When I was younger,
particularly one instance, Jimmy Durante.
Jimmy Durante, yeah.
He was the guy who is famous for going ah-ha-cha-cha-cha.
Ah-cha-cha-cha, yeah.
That would be capitalized with a character from Mickey Mouse that they introduced in that era called Mortimer Mouse, and he was sort of the rival Mouse who, you know, he really wanted Minnie, and apparently his likes are woman. I don't know the full list, but it's really funny.
Wow,
it's a hilarious
which is the same thing if you think about it.
And that character particularly is becoming into the zeitgeist with meme culture.
Oh, Mortimer's getting pulled into the meme culture, along with Steamboat Willie, which is free to use now. Here's the other part of what I want to mention is I watched Bugs Bunny cartoons and Daffy Duck and all kinds of stuff when I was a kid, and I thought they were great. I didn't know all the actors involved in that until later.
Yeah, a lot of times they make like jokes to like very old, I don't know, maybe it's like some radio baseball announcer from the 1920s, and then you're like, okay, I mean, bro.
I did not get all the jokes.
Here's the likes and dislikes from the Disney Wiki. Likes, woman, especially Minnie. Winning, pranks, money, himself, and tormenting Mickey. His dislikes are also Mickey, of course. Rejection, being insulted, and Donald's voice.
There you go.
That's the list. It's sort of funny. Donald's voice. Just by itself.
That's great. So just like as long as Mickey and Donald hang out together and they're homies, there won't be any Mortimer trouble because they'll be like,
Did you just do that?
Huh?
Mortimer trouble? Any Mortimer trouble?
Oh no, I didn't think about that. But okay.
I guess we're even now on the unintended puns front.
Oh no, it's okay.
About Rico, right? We're talking about his power craze, especially later in the movie when he's literally has everything is diamond encrusted. Even like a desk. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
And the movie, the book.
Yeah.
It's sort of talking about the societal fear of unchecked capitalism and, of course, the higher class that was especially notable in, like, the Depression. And the Depression happened for a reason, and it was because there was a lot of money siphoning. And that money siphoning was done by the higher class who were just absolute capitalism. They're going to make money, invest the companies, create the companies. I could say that there are more businessy terms on the wall, but of course, I'm not that smart. Economics,
right.
Tipping the scales.
Well, the other thing is you in the 30s, you had people that were living very similar to how Rico ends up, in a flop house, which because you flop down is basically what that's called. You're just living on a cot. I was expecting in that last scene to have Humphrey Bogart and his buddy kind of sitting on one of those talking about gold. That's what that place reminded me of is like the American version of that place that they were in. That place where they ended up, a lot of people kind of couldn't get jobs. And here you got Rico with a diamond encrusted desk. Why?
But also the thing
you don't need all that.
The reason for his downfall, interestingly, was the press. As you become more popular and, capitalists start getting more into, Pepsi or Coca-Cola. Everyone knows that. And that's for a reason. They, went on an upward curve incrementally since they started in, dude, was it it was really the 60s, I think. If it was before the 60s, man, it was founded really early. I don't know about when Pepsi was founded, but it was probably way later than Coca-Cola.
Well, Pepsi was started early, but they only start getting popular and getting well known and becoming a rival for Coca-Cola, like I'd say later, toward the 40s, 50s, and, even
Honestly,
60s,
they're
60s.
fairly equivalent in my eyes, but then again, I don't drink Coca-Cola or Pepsi
No,
that often, so it's like they sort of taste the same, but
I'm a
it's
Dr. Pepper guy
interchangeable.
myself. Rico is, all the other characters, if you notice that all the other characters other than Rico are kind of staying away from, the shutters and the cameras, or they act like that, right? And then Rico, he wants to be known. He was reading about Pete Montana being honored, and he read about that in a newspaper, and they go, that should be me. Right? So, again,
Wait, that's how the movie started. So the movie is bookended by the presence of the press.
Yes.
That's interesting. And also to bring an example toward fame being your downfall when you do criminal activities. I don't know too much about how exactly relevant or how exactly the power balances out, and I haven't looked at it too much. O.J. Simpson was at least from, I don't know specifically, or if he was in many different sports, an athlete.
Yeah, ask me about this, because I was alive.
What was he?
I was in high school. I was in high school at the time. His name was Orenthal James Simpson, and he was a famous football player. He was called, because his initials are OJ, so they called him the Juice. And he was really good. He was when he would be a receiver, right? He'd catch the ball and run with it. And so they would say the juice is loose. The thing that I saw him most on, he was also got into movies. And there was a movie series that I watched him in, which is called The Naked Gun. It was based upon a TV show called Police Squad. And it was a parody.
Yeah, that was that parody thing.
It's hilarious.
I didn't know it was a TV show. I thought it was a actual movie. But
we have to watch.
Airplane.
We have to watch. Yes, a similar.
It was along that.
It was the same directors of Airplane and those kind of movies.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
But Police Squad, I think those episodes are online somewhere. But you need to watch those. Those are hilarious. But anyway, back to this. OJ was in those Naked Gun movies, and later on, I believe she was his ex-wife at the time. His ex-wife and her boyfriend were murdered. OJ was connected somehow. Either, they're saying that he had something to do with it, but, he ran and had a police chase. Yeah, and there was a huge televised trial. I mean, it was all over the news for like months and months and months. That I do know.
But he was a football player. He was also in a fair many TV shows,
that too,
often as a guest, and, fairly kind person.
He seemed to be.
He was on this. Was it Alice in Wonderland show? It was one of those where it was like the Winnie the Pooh Corner, one of those shows.
Yeah.
He was on, and strangely enough, people can't find that episode. It's probably been because it's stuck in the archives ever since O.J. Simpson got controversial. But that's one thing. Another thing I can think of, another thing I'm sketchy on the exact situation, a more recent example would be, Kanye West? It could have been Drake. I don't remember exactly. But there was something with Taylor Swift.
Yes.
Where Taylor Swift and someone else was up there.
Taylor Swift was getting an award, and Kanye West came up behind her and said,
He said, if you don't mind, I don't want to steal this from you, but Beyonce is better.
Yeah, well, Beyonce deserved the award more than Taylor Swift did.
That got fairly controversial, especially as he was a popular figure.
All right, so let's take it way back even further than that, and connect it more with the title, Caesar. Right? I mean, Caesar. A lot of us know the story of Julius Caesar.
He was the emperor of Rome.
He was murdered by a bunch of other senators on the floor of the Senate. There is a famous play by William Shakespeare, Julius Caesar, and they talk about Caesar's ambition. He's too ambitious. I think it's Cassius and the other senators. They stab him multiple times with swords on the floor of the Senate, and his other fellow cohorts that are doing that got him killed. But this is different because I think this little Caesar is getting himself killed with his own vain ambitions.
Another thing
I think he got
of...
Joe Massara killed. I'm pretty sure that it was his fault because Joe Massara wanted out bad, and Rico wouldn't let him. A lot of times they want to get out and they keep pulling him back in, so to speak, to use that Godfather quote.
Yeah, another thing you could that I've been staring at, like, some publicity, or not publicity photos, but they're like photos from the movie. Rico is short.
Yes, he is. I'm
He
glad
is
you
shorter
mentioned
than most
that.
of them, but he's like just because of the feistiness, I guess, he raises to the top.
All right, well, that's why they call him Little Caesar, and he doesn't get too mad about being called little. It seems to be that, of course, Napoleon got the whole thing with people were saying that he was short. He wasn't actually as short as you think. I've read. But here's the thing, that complex named after Napoleon is a whole thing where if you feel like you're not as tall in stature, either socially or physically, you feel like you have to do something to really stand out. And sometimes it's doing something really crazy, something dangerous.
Especially when during the Great Depression, everyone was sort of brought down. A little bit what is communist like? I don't know a good word for that. But yeah, everyone was sort of brought down to the same level, and everyone was sort of conformative as a society. And he was the one guy who was like, I'm not going to conform with society. I'm going to be the bad guy. I'm going to bring myself out of this heap of people and into the glory. Although it was not a good position to be in ultimately because of the moral concerns. It's just interesting to think about.
That's a good point. He got dropped down really low though. There is a quote. I don't know if it's from the Bible. Here, there's a couple quotes from the Bible. It's how the mighty have fallen.
Pride becomes before a fall.
Pride goeth before a fall is another quote. And I've always thought that movies that quote the Bible all the time seem kind of pretentious. But back then, I don't think there was that many movies that did that. So I don't think that and a lot of movies were pretentious anyway. High mark of quality is pretension. This movie, I think it was a lot more inspirational for further gangster movies down the line. I don't think that it's
also to
one
note
of the best
upon
ones
the
ever.
religious elements, especially being the Italian elements. There is a lot of sort of
Rome?
Catholicism.
Yes.
What do you can think about? Oh, Rome, actually. Along with that,
Roman Catholicism. In the character of Joe Pasa, who is another guy, not Joe Massara, Joe Pasa. He's another guy. He's a young guy. He's the driver, and he actually has this moment with his mother, and his mother talks about the priest and the candles in the church, and used to be an altar boy, and I miss you, and he's like, oh, mama. And he wants to go back and talk to the priest, and spoiler alert, he catches some bullets from Bandello's gang on the steps going up to the cathedral, to the church. There's always been that connection between the Catholic Church and this mafia thing, because you got a lot of Italians. Italians generally, have been portrayed as Catholic in these movies. So you have priests, you have a confirmation, you have a child's first baptism. You have all these different Catholic elements that are kind of weaved in to these gangster movies, even going into the 70s, 80s, and 90s or whatever. It's there. Whether it's it's Irish gangsters and they've got the Catholic or whatever Protestant father or whatever, but there's always a religious element in there somewhere.
I'd like to see like Brazilian gangsters or like the third world type Gangster. What do they do with that? I feel like they're most prone to that, not stereotyping them.
There's a Catholic thing in there, but there's also a little bit of those beliefs of South America. You know, there's the Santeria and stuff like that, and the Candomblé and stuff like that. There was a movie series that I saw that I can't remember the name of it. I mean, I'm gonna beat myself in the morning for this, but it had it was kind of like it had the cops on one side and the bad guys on the other, and it had to do with how the buildings are built and how the slums are built in Brazil and in those areas. The favelas is what they call those. They look like a bunch of ramshackle homes and places, and it's hard. It's easy to get lost down there. And a lot of those bad guys will just rule them with an iron fist. And the cops just could not break through to this, and they were like, "Well, we have to get ruthless." And I remember that was a really good series of movies. It was very well done, and I think there was an actor in there that really broke out, and as far as got famous for the movie series, and he kind of broke into some movies here in the States, here in America. I think he did the voice of the wolf, death guy, the Death Wolf, whatever you want to call it, in Puss in Boots: The Last Wish.
Oh yeah,
he did the voice of the Death Wolf guy.
A lot of times I'm just like, I want to watch this just for this character and his interaction with Puss.
Yes,
just being amazing.
Yes. We might have to watch that one day.
But we have talked extensively about various elements behind this movie, and I do love it and all, but I was on production for this movie, and so I have some production details.
Okay.
I guess I won't be able to get into way too much of it. But to go back to an earlier point, I just wanted to say here's about the legacy of Little Caesar. I mean, of course, it was a box office success because there was just a craze for gangster movies. Or, let's see. Yeah, no, it doesn't have figures. But there is the biographer for Mervyn LeRoy, who is the director of this movie, who I'll be talking about shortly. His biographer, he wrote the biography for him. He said it was not until Little Caesar and the Big House that any real attempt was made by Hollywood to describe the brutal reality of the criminal world. So, in fact, actually, there's 3 pillars that started the gangster movie that jump-started it into existence. Was Little Caesar, the Big House, and the Public Enemy.
Who was in the Big House? Do you remember?
I don't know. Came out the same year, though.
Yeah, and then, of course, Scarface wouldn't come out for another year. So you had to have these kind of pillars to come out first.
So, concerning Mervyn LeRoy, who I cannot get into much detail about him, although his Wikipedia article is absolutely amazing. It is a masterpiece. Paraphrased is no justice for... I was like, whoa, this article does not look like all the other articles. Whoa, all this stuff. This is cool. But why, though, is it so awesome is because this is the producer of The Wizard of Oz, which, timeless movie, right? This is the producer, and we talked about the producer having more power than the director.
In some ways,
in some
yes.
of our earlier, Dracula and Frankenstein and earlier, those episodes, which, by the way, Dracula and Frankenstein are timeless in their own right.
Yes, they are. And they came out around the same time as this movie. I mean, 30, 31. Yeah?
Oh, yeah, you could say M, which is another movie we did earlier, is sort of in this general ballpark. And amazing movie.
Yes. Did some research real quick. The Big House came out in 1930. It was pre-code. It was a prison drama, so it mainly took place inside the prison, aka the Big House. I don't know a lot of the people in this, but I will tell you, it's got Wallace Beery in it, aka Challenger from The
Professor
Lost
Challenger
World.
from The Lost World.
Yes.
And we talked about how cool he was. His beard was immaculate.
His beard was immaculate, and he was a booger. He was a tough dude.
He
the
would
big house.
lift his wife up into a wardrobe, like a closet wardrobe thingy. And he lifted her up on a piece of furniture for absolutely barely any reason at all. And it's absolutely metal. If you want to know why he did that or the context, listen to the episode. Just please do.
Yeah, listen to our Lost World episode.
It's pretty good.
Anyway, so
Mervyn LeRoy.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So yeah, she was born in 1900 flat. One of the few people we talked about who were born in 1900 flat. I can't remember who exactly, but he had well-off parents who were into vaudeville, and this is where he sort of made his way as a Charlie Chaplin impersonator. And apparently he won a competition of Charlie Chaplin impersonators, which is inherently hilarious to me. That you have all these people with like this black mustache and the top hat, and then like the furrowed like black eyebrows, and then like putting on the the wide face that's like surprised but with the mouth closed. That's what I was doing there. Like
yeah.
You could imagine it. Just go in front of a mirror and like do a surprise face, and then shut your mouth, and then like move your lips sort of upwards, and then like also put on like a passionate air of happiness, I guess, because he was just like, yeah, I'm going about life, and it's comedic. So he got the gig as the singing newsboy at vaudeville shows with people like Houdini and Jack Benny.
Yes.
The comedian.
Take my wife, please.
And
That's
I'm like,
guy.
Okay, man. Well, he then got into acting. Basically, his cousin just happened to know Sam Goldwyn and Adolf Zukor, who were founders of MGM and Paramount, respectively. And it's like,
exactly.
Okay, his cousin knew these popular people, and they're like, oh yeah, we could get you in. He hooked him up into a job in wardrobe. And he's like, okay, I guess.
It's all in who you know, man.
He was their manager, and he's like, well, you could get it for free, but it wasn't like in anything super spectacular, though. It was wardrobe. He crawled his way up from extras. In the sound era, he then directed comedies. His list includes The Gentleman's Fate with John Gilbert, High Pressure, which was apparently a proto-screwball comedy. Which, yeah, when you do think about
screwball
it,
comedies are generally all about the relationships between men and women, and also really fast dialogue, snappy dialogue.
Would that constitute Casablanca as a screwball comedy?
No, that's a romance. Invisible.
Okay, yeah, that's
Invisible, and we started talking about screwball comedies when we did Invisible Woman.
And by the way, that had William Powell in it. That has William Powell in it. He is one of the popular names among like Fred Astaire, Mickey Rooney, people like that.
Yes, that was his circle.
Then he supported Warner Brothers through the Depression with an astounding 44 pictures. So okay, wow, he was like really hardworking for Warner Brothers, particularly in this Depression era, and so he was like the go-to guy.
He was a hit maker. He was he kept them afloat. Yep.
So John Baxter observes Warner's films were the most perfect economical exercises in cinematic mechanics of which Hollywood was capable. Basically, it's testing out how much money it would take, I guess, by economical exercise. That's a little bit obscured.
Well, maybe he knew how to cut corners to get the best actors, but still spend enough money that they actually made a profit.
Okay, yeah. There was no fat on them, either as art or entertainment. As a filmmaking tool, it functioned best in the hands of two great directors, Marvin LeRoy and Michael Curtiz.
Michael Curtiz, we've seen some of his stuff, yeah.
Yes, we have. No genius can function without variation under such pressure. So, yeah, he was the Great Depression was like, must have been hard on his family, his financial situation, yet he was like, I'm gonna make a bunch of movies. because they're cool, I guess.
Well, also he knew how to do it and come under budget. Remember, the guy just said they had no fat on them, meaning that they were lean. They did what they needed to do. You get in and you get it under budget, and you get it out on time. Yeah.
Yes, and here's an important point he made. Metro Goldwyn Mayer, uncontested for its technical virtuosity, aimed to serve middle-class tastes. And Paramount Studios identified for its sophisticated dialogue and Baroque settings, which I guess both of those are accurate. We talked about MGM, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I think had like that immaculate lighting to it. And
yes.
The way they reuse the sets. I don't remember the exact situation on that, but then again, listen to the episode. And that Paramount Studios' sophisticated dialogue and Baroque settings that cater to European sensibilities, so it was more popular in Europe than America. Makes sense. It wasn't a big fish in America relatively. It was more like the 4 out of top 4, last of top 4. In contrast, Warner Brothers films carried themes appealing to the working classes, which, yeah, I could agree with.
Those are the people that suffered the most under the Great Depression.
Here's even more about Leroy's early 30s work. While the world was struggling out of the Depression, or no, this is Leroy himself, I think.
Yeah.
While the world was struggling out of the Depression, I turned out film after film after film. It was a period of tremendous activity for me and for Hollywood in general. I threw myself into my work. We had to keep working to stay up with the demand. The public was voracious in its appetite for movies. Neighborhood theaters had double features, and the bill usually changed twice a week. That means they were showing 4 new pictures a week, 208 a year, and that's only one theater. So, yeah. And then, on top of that, there are the shorts that they put before the movies, so it's like you still have to animate and make those, and especially if you're Disney, you want to make them pretty high quality.
Plus, it was Warner Brothers,
so
they
only
had
movies that were, they only had like actual feature lengths.
Bugs Bunny
for 3 years of the Depression.
Right.
Yeah, and Bugs Bunny. Yeah, Looney Tunes shorts, a lot of them.
Yep.
And pretty high quality too. I mean, like you're animating them turning into big chungus. You're making them do all sorts of wacky things. You're making
Merry Melodies. Yeah.
You're making Daffy Duck go into this warped reality where they're like, I remember the exact order what the short was about. I think there was the hand painting in some of the stuff, but he was great short. He was interacting with a lot of different elements there, and it's like if that was made during the Depression, which I don't guarantee that it was, they made a lot of 1940s stuff. Another quote from John Baxter, if the poor Curtis films are disappointing, Leroy's failures are impossible to watch, which is an interesting perspective on the opposite end. While his initial concept was faulty or failed, through heavy-handed scripting, he could be as banal as Henry King at his worst. It needed a firm central theme to sustain Leroy, a solid anchor for his speculation. And it was then when he had his films that reach heights at least as lofty as those scaled by Curtis. So, he was really after the core theme of it. He was really for it. It's not just cookie cutter. It's not just cookie cutter.
But also when he didn't have a core, really tight theme or a really good cast to wrap the movie around, it didn't do too well. The person just now was saying that Michael Curtis, you know, even when Michael Curtis wasn't swinging for the fences and doing really great, they were still okay. But Marvin Leroy, they were either great or really bad, because when he didn't have that core theme that he could wrap it around, they weren't great. So, you know, a little bit kind of fragile director.
Also, I forgot to mention his origin story of how his parents died in the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. At 5:12 Pacific Standard Time on Wednesday, April 18th, 1906, the coast of Northern California was struck by a major earthquake with an estimated moment magnitude of 7.9 and a maximum Mercalli intensity of 9. In other words, extreme.
Wow.
High-intensity shaking was felt from Eureka on the north coast to the Salinas Valley. It's probably
Salinas.
more Spanish. Also, Eureka. There's a whole city named Eureka. Oh wow, and it's like on like the islands in the coast. That's fun.
Yeah.
An agricultural region to the south of the San Francisco Bay Area. Devastating fires soon broke out in San Francisco and lasted for several days. More than 3,000 people died, and over 80% of the city was destroyed. 80% of San Francisco.
Yes.
And it probably expanded a lot bigger. But then again, I don't know the exact girth of San Francisco. It might just be, like, quite coastal. And it doesn't expand very far into the actual...
It's set on the bay in California. Like, it's right on the bay. You're right there with the Pacific.
Eureka's actually fairly upwards toward the north. So, yeah, that is quite a bit of an area that got devastated. The event is remembered as the deadliest earthquake in the history of the United States. The death toll remains the greatest loss of life from a natural disaster in California's history, and high on the lists of American disasters. I can see this picture here, and man, look at all of those buildings just capstone or
capsized.
Yeah, the cap was taken off of them. Like, I mean, look at that. Like, you could see like this array of buildings in the middle right. You're not on the Wikipedia article, but just get on it to see what I'm saying. That is just, it looks like sort of like this castle-y shape. You know, it's got the boxes. It's fairly like multi-geometrical, and it's just, you can only see the bottom of it. It's entirely ripped off. And it's like, you could think of like how sort of castellar the building sort of looked. I don't know if that's a word. There are some of these buildings behind here in the back that are more okay, but you can see a lot of heavy damage, a lot of debris clouding the bottoms. I mean, look at that. There's this like whole street here. Or maybe that there's a little like river bridge thing toward the bottom of it. But you can see the entire road was covered. They had to shovel this thing out, I bet.
So that's his origin story. His parents died in that.
Yeah, that was really a big motivator for him, and pretty impactful as impact can be.
Right. Yeah, in both physically and you know, I'm sure with his career. So that's Mervyn LeRoy. So what can you say about Edward G. Robinson and Douglas Fairbanks Jr.?
There's quite a more that I could say. I will say that there's this dude, George E. Stone, who was, I can't remember his name. He was like the fun guy out of all of these group, not a mushroom, but
right.
He was in a couple gangster stuff. He was in the Man with the Golden Arm.
Yes.
Which you've seen.
I have, yeah.
Which had apparently Frank Sinatra in it, I guess before, or while he was, in his musical career.
Yeah, he played a heroin addict who was trying to get off this stuff, and
he had a golden arm. And it's cool.
Well, the arm wasn't golden, but what it was is he was a drummer. But the thing is that the golden arm, it was based off a book about that. But it,
lots of different, gangster stuff. Douglas Fairbanks Jr. is a more complicated one, and Edward G. Robinson is a more complicated one. Unfortunately, I don't think we will have enough time for that. We will have to discuss that as the plot goes, because we talked a lot about cool stuff.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
If you want to cover that in part 2, we absolutely can. I've got my plot down really tight.
And also, I was thinking because you'd think of Little Caesar with this movie, we might do a little bit of pizza chain reviewing. We'll have to save that for next time. Who knows? Could I summarize the last production information otherwise?
Sure can.
Clark Gable was sought out for the role in the film, albeit with conflicting perspectives and memoirs. Jack Al Warner said that he wanted LeRoy, said that LeRoy wanted Gable for the lead role, while LeRoy stated he wanted Gable for the second lead role. But in any case, Warner turned Gable down. Robinson had already played a gangster in films such as The Racket and The Widow from Chicago, so he was already a gangster, and they were like, cool, let's make you in a gangster film. Rotten Tomatoes, 92% based on 25 reviews. I don't know how updated this is currently, but according to this, it says Little Caesar achieves epic stature thanks to Edward G. Robinson's volcanic charisma. Okay? Forging a template for the big screen mobster archetype that's yet to be surpassed. I guess he just has the Riz.
He does.
He has the Riz.
He has the Rico Riz.
The Rico Riz. I guess we're dating ourselves a little bit now. He has the Riz. Volcanic Riz. I've never seen the word volcanic used to describe Riz
charisma.
in my life.
I don't think it's volcanic. I do think that it is. He is a. I'd say it's almost like a steam engine, because he's constantly. You don't know if he's going to blow over. I don't know about volcanic. I wouldn't say that about Edward G. Robinson, but I would say that
I feel like the more volcanic is with Joe, and his issues are far more like interesting than what we get here with Rico, because Rico's got nothing interesting going on. Everyone else does.
I think Rico is moving upwards in this movie, but I think it's a simmering. It could blow over. Maybe that's the volcanic they're talking about. Is when you got a volcano that's
but it
gonna
sounds like
blow.
a compliment. So okay,
it is a compliment in his case.
But yeah, the film was a box office success. The film's box office success also spawned the production of several successful gangster films, many of which were made by Warner Brothers. It's listed in the 1001 movies you must see before you die. We talked about that. I think Dracula or Frankenstein was on there.
Yes.
And overall, I guess that's really all that we have for today. Tune in next time to hear what we think about pizzas, what we think about the plot of the movie, as well as the pertinent details of the two main characters of this movie, really.
The
Edward G.
leads,
Robinson and Douglas Fairbanks Jr.
Yep, we will do that.
Whom, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., we will be talking about him more as we go on. He was in a movie called Gunga Din, which sounds very important, like a very important movie.
Yeah, that one's infamous, or famous, I should say.
Yeah, Misa love Gunga Din.
It is not a Gungan. It's not a Jar Jar Binks thing. It's actually an Indian movie. Like a cook. It's not.
Gunga Din is a place in India.
It's a character.
Also, apparently, there's a song called "Tough Guys" by the Good Rats in their Rhapsody in Blue album, which is absolutely hilarious. They're punning their own name with Rhapsody in Blue, which is this classical piece. That's how it went. 1976. It says, Eddie, I'll always remember the way you handled the good and the bad. Mother of Mercy. Is this the end of Rico? Oh, no. You have to listen to the song by the Good Rats called "Tough Guys" to know what that sort of sounds like.
It quotes
the
movie.
This is the ending quote of the movie. Mother of Mercy. Is this the end of Rico?
And the answer is yes, it is. This is also the end of part one of our
podcast.
Talking about
Little
Caesar.
The first half of Little Caesar. It's sort of weird that they got, because we haven't split these up before, and then it's like, okay, well, we're gonna split them up for the next thing that we do, and then it's like, okay, it's a little bit hard to adjust to. Many people come across the second half before they see the first part, and then dying to hear the first part. We hope it's not way too important that you don't catch the first part and then the second part, especially now. But it's the end of Rico and the end of the podcast. Any more thoughts?
Nope. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. See?
Yeah. See next time. See?
We're just doing the same exact thing we did last time.
Hey, you're through. William, you're through.
Thanks for listening to Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. Click here and here for some more excellent content. Hope you'll enjoy it. See you soon.